welcome to Retech. You may have seen my last video about the Commodore Plus 4 and this game Pets Rescue, but this is not what this video is all about. You can see it's running because I use this as a baseline. Okay, we have a Commodore disk drive, we have the Plus 4 and also Pets Rescue. Now we know the disk drive works because I've used it lots of times. We also know the Pets Rescue runs fine on the Plus 4, and it's, as I said, it's a nice game. And we also know that, you know, everything else should be sounding the way it sounds as well. Now, what we don't know is this machine, because this machine isn't the original Plus 4 that we used. And what it is, I bought a dead Plus 4 to repair, and also then to use it as a basis to find out if hack junk style replacement processes for it are going to work. And that's where I'm coming from today, because I know they work with cassette tapes and I know they've got a few limitations, but I've never really put them to the test with floppy disk software, and that's where it comes into today. So the original processor in here is an 8501, and we have a 6510 replacement in the version of hack junk, and also we have another replacement which was the 85MC01, and that is another replacement processor. This one is actually from Italy, and this was my kind of preferred processor when I actually rebuilt the original Commodore Plus 4, which had a power supply issue and a processor fault and so on. And although I found that the hack junk one was very good as well, there was very little between them, and I think it was just down to preference at the end. But was it as good as the original processor, the original 8501 that was in the Commodore Plus 4? Now, there are a few limitations with the hack junk one, which is it needs a different kernel or a modified kernel, because it doesn't put the tape cassette control in that the original processor did. But that was quite a straightforward workaround. It just put in longer pauses, and everything seemed to be fine. And also, was meant to have cured the serial port issues. Now, the other version, the 85MC01, was reportedly have meant to cure all of the issues. Then you were able to use the machine as a normal machine, and that's what we're going to find today, and find out if either of these will work in a Commodore Plus 4 or a Commodore 16 and run it as a standard machine with no drawbacks. So that's what we're going to look at today, so let's have a look. Okay, so we start off with the 85MC01. You can see it installed here on the little daughter board, and it's running fine, and there's nothing outwardly wrong with the way it looks and the way it feels. It just looks like a normal Commodore Plus 4. And we're going to use a tried and tested game, which is Pets Rescue, which we know works if you've seen a previous review on it, and we also know it works on the previous Plus 4 with a standard processor. So we're going to load it in, and we're going to just see what happens. And immediately we have a problem, because there's nothing wrong with that command. And you see the next time round it works. You can hear the drive trying to do its job, and so far nothing. There should be at least a splash screen on at the moment, and it just looks like it's spinning away, doing not a lot. There you go. We'll reset the machine again, and we know this version of the processor replacement works with cassette tapes, because we've seen it work on one of my old Plus 4s, which I used this exact same processor in, and that's the same Plus 4 we ran Pet Rescue off for the review, but I've actually replaced it with a standard processor for one of these, and because I got hold of one and it works fine. Now, up until then I had no real call to use floppy disks with this machine, and now I'm kind of starting to get into it, because there's a few companies that are doing recreated floppy disks for these, and it's nice to have original versions for these machines. So I didn't find a problem with the original processor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the case open, and we're going to now put a different replacement processor in there and see what happens. And this time it's going to be the hack junk version. And so you can see this version here, which we're going to take out now. It's quite an easy one to take out. There's no real tool needed because it's on quite a big board. You can just slide it out. Now the next part is to put the new processor in, which is here, which I have used before, and it worked well with cassette software. And with it you actually get a replacement kernel, which is here, which I'm just going to pop into the machine now. And we're just going to gently try not to disturb the ribbon too much because it is fragile. Just going to lay the lid down, and we're going to give it a try. So we're going to use exactly the same command. And we still have a problem. Now it's doing very much the same as the other one, and we know this machine works with this processor on cassette tapes. So we're going to back out with the lid. Now we're going to remove the hack junk processor and the kernel it comes with. And we're going to put the original processor back in the board. It's just a spare one I've got, because the whole idea with this machine was to check out the processors and find out, do these replacement ones actually work 100%? And there we have it. You can see exactly what the problem is, and the problem we've got is that these and this and the replacement kernel doesn't work properly. It works with cassettes, it works with the SD to IEC, but it doesn't work with the original hardware. It doesn't work with the original floppy drives. So I think unless you're really dead set on using an original drive with this machine, be it the 1541 or its newer cousin, you're okay with these. You're okay with either of these because it runs cassette software perfectly. There's not a massive problem with them, but if you're intending on running a disk drive with a Plus 4, then it's something you would have to seriously think about by putting one of these in, other than biding your time to get an original processor. Okay, so this time I'm going to try, just for comparison's sake and thoroughness, we're going to try Adventures in Time for the Commodore Plus 4, and again it's on floppy disk, and we're just going to try it out and load it up. And as you can see, it runs fine. So there is a bit of a disparity on which software you use and how intensive or how many shortcuts they've taken with the processor and the registers, and that basically ties up how these replacement processors actually run. So they're not 100% compatible. They also have issues with loading from disks, and a lot of that's probably the timing on the disk drive itself. And what happened is you just got a failure, as in a seek failure. The way the HackJunk module works, it uses slightly different code on the kernel, which allows it to work with cassette software, and it also allows the pausers to work because it doesn't control the motor. This version here doesn't do that. It tries to emulate the original processor, but it doesn't work with the serial port on this very well. If you don't use floppy drives and you only use cassette tape or an IEC, SD to IEC, then you're going to be alright, because I've run IECs on either of these and it works okay. So there you go. So have a think about what you're going to do with your Plus 4s or your Commodore 16s for that matter, and hopefully you'll make the right decision and either hang out for the original processor from a dead machine, or if you do predominantly want to run cassette tapes and stuff like that, well then basically these are fine. They're good additions. They keep the functionality of the machine working, and you've always got emulation for the things that you couldn't run off a floppy on one of these processor units. It depends how original you want to be. Okay, so I've got 3 Plus 4s here, and just to set everything straight, we've got an original Plus 4, never been tampered with, has all the original components in it from when it left the factory, and it runs fantastically. Then we have another Plus 4 behind, which has been completely rebuilt, new TED, new original processor, new PLA, couple of capacitors, and again it runs fine, no issues whatsoever. Then we have this one, which was a original Plus 4, but it had a processor fault, which is why I used these two different versions, which you've seen throughout this video. And also it's also got an original PLA and original TED. And then behind we have the Plus 4 motherboard, which again is fully working. It's missing its processor at the moment because I've taken it out, but it's all original PLA, processor, TED, memory, the whole lot, and it was used as a bit of a test mule as well. Now all of these machines, every single one of them, have had their processors changed for these, either the CM or the 8501 conversion. And basically the 8501 conversion, which runs a 6510, runs like a dream, because it's actually got another chip with it that comes with it, and basically what it does is it corrects the timing for the cassette port. Now the other one, this one here, which is alright, it's the 85MC01, which again, it does a good job of being a straightforward processor for a Plus 4, But both of these have problems. Both of these have problems with disk drives. 1541, it kind of works with it hit and miss, because you'll get keystrokes that don't work properly first time round, or it won't actually read the drive properly first time round. You do another go and it will read the drive and so on, as you saw in the video. But it will also read fine for a good deal of the time, so you can get away with it with games that don't use shortcuts on the processors or use registers that really aren't meant to be used, and if you use software that doesn't cheat, for want of a better term, and you use basically a 1541 with a Commodore Plus 4, then most of the time you can kind of get away with it. Now, 1541 and its new siblings have exactly the same issues, and I kind of thought that might have been a drive fault, but I've been through a few of the drives and a few of the disks and so on, and it's hit and miss. Now, if you put an original processor back in these and you then let the drive load up as normal, it loads first time every time. It catalogs first time every time. It installs first time every time. And software that was designed for the original processor, basically if it had shortcuts or pokes to speed up pokes or something similar to that, or it was poking a register that these don't know about, then it would crash. It would either not load, crash, wouldn't do a thing, and basically it would look like your processor or your PLA wasn't working properly. Now, that's the shortcoming on these machines of these what they call emulated processors, for want of a better term, because it's trying to be a standard Commodore Plus 4 processor. So we're looking at something that's trying to be an 8501, and for probably about 85% of the time these are perfect. They will run everything you would probably want them to run, but it's that other kind of 15% of the time where you've got a modern game like Pets Rescue, or you have another game that relies on a certain register that these have problems with, and then you're back to square one with a machine that just either refuses or just crashes. Now, is it worth having these? Well, yeah, because it got me out of a bit of a bind when I couldn't get hold of an original 8501, and it allowed me to use most of the software. And cassette software doesn't seem to have as many issues as floppy drive software, floppy disk software, and that may be down to the complexity of the games on disk, where there are multiple loads, etc. But it didn't seem to struggle as much as when you put a 1541 in. And as I said, most of the software that I ran off of the SD to IEC ran perfectly on one of these with a replacement processor. But the upshot is, if you want 100% compatibility, 100% original Commodore Plus 4 that will run everything, you're going to have to search out an 8501 and not these. These will get you by, and they'll also be good if you just want to collect a Commodore Plus 4 and you want a working one. Okay, one that works, one that switches on, one where you can run some of the Plus 4 software, some of the Plus 4 ROMs, such as the word processor and so on. But take your time and have a hunt for an 8501, an original Plus 4 processor, and your machine will thank you for it eventually. So, it's kind of a mixed bag, because these both are good. I can't particularly fault them. I do prefer this one, the 85MC01, to the Hat Junk version, although they both do the same, but it's preference. But yet look for a original processor and you'll be eventually a lot better off with these machines, although you do run the risk of the processors eventually giving up, because they get hot, they overheat, they give up, and then you're back to square one. So if you can, get hold of a couple, but if you can't, well, you're more than likely going to have to put up with the slight incompatibility of certain software on one of these machines with a modern version of an 8501. But anyway, it's been quite an exhaustive test. It's took longer than you actually saw on video because I tried it with lots of other software. I just picked out a couple of discs just to kind of prove the point, and you know, it's worth thinking about. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you on this channel very shortly. Okay, thank you. So if you enjoyed it, please subscribe.